We're building up to Christmas, and maybe you've started some of your Christmas traditions. And this year, I'm sure some of your Christmas traditions might feel a little disrupted, and some of mine will, but I know that I'm still going to continue to wrap my presents while watching The Muppets Christmas Carol, because is there a better Christmas film? I don't think there is. Another one of my traditions is we get a birthday cake for Christmas every year to celebrate Jesus' birthday. And it's been the norm since I was 3 because I associated birthdays and I associated it with cake, and I just love cake. But this Christmas things might not be the same, and one thing that definitely is the same is my mum watching Hallmark Christmas films every single day. And the amount of times that she sits there and goes, I just would love to experience that little American village and how they do Christmas with the snow and the decorations, and we can create expectations of Christmas based on the movies that we see. But will our Christmas, our own experience, live up to those expectations? And how often do we lower our expectations because we don't believe they'll be met? Even if you don't realise you probably do it, whether it's I won't do well in the exam, or I won't be picked for the football team, or I won't have the main part in the show, or I won't be included in the socially distanced walk that we might go on. Have you ever been there? Like, I know that I have. I know that I stopped playing football when I was 11 years old because I lowered my expectations so much because I've never played for Liverpool. But maybe you've felt that way and stopped praying, or you lacked interest in your faith because you feel God is distant. And when you do pray, it's an expectation. It's not even an expectation. You kind of sit there and go, oh, God's done something, and feel really surprised by it. But as we think about Christmas, we come to realise God is about changing our expectations. Before Christmas, the Israelites were awaiting a saviour, and you'd sit there and you go, cue Jesus. But that's not exactly what people's expectations were. Their expectations were that they would have some big warrior like Achilles come around and kill all the Romans and destroy them. So when we read the Christmas story and we are introduced to this teenage girl called Mary and her husband-to-be Joseph, who were sent to Bethlehem for a census. And you see, a census was a way of the Romans who ruled over them just counting everybody who they ruled over. There would be little surprise in this moment if Mary and Joseph thought that God was distant or angry or punishing them or was silent. But it's here that we begin and we learn something true about God. He didn't live up to theirs or anyone else's expectations. And we find out what God is really like in Matthew chapter 1 verses 21 to 23. It says, she will give birth to a son, and you ought to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. And this took place to fulfill the Lord and what he'd said through the prophets. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. See, they expected a warrior saviour, this person would destroy everyone in their path, this God who was distant and angry. But they didn't get what they expected. God wasn't who they expected. God is with us and he is Emmanuel. And what does this mean for us? It means he is always with you. If you're having a rough day, he's with you. If you're arguing with your parents, he is with you. If you've fallen out with your friends, he's with you. If you've got a test, he's with you. If you're in the team or not in the team, he is with you. He is always with you. When you're figuring out your life, working through the situations, you are not alone because God is with you. Over this Christmas period, I want you to remember that God is with you. He is the one that I will look to remember that, there's ways that we can look to remember that God is with us. And Jesus said he was the light of the world. And over Christmas we see many lights, and we can see these lights as a reminder of who God is and him being with us. And as we work out those situations, figure out life, we can see the lights around us and we can pray knowing that God is with us. Maybe for you it'll look like writing a note as a reminder, or setting an alarm, or texting somebody, a friend or a family to remind them too. Or maybe it's thinking, if God is with me, how would that change my life right now? If this is true, what would change? I think this Christmas is a great time to change our expectations, as it's not going to be a normal Christmas. That's not necessarily a bad thing, as God has shown us in the Christmas story that a change in expectation can result in something better if we embrace it. So why don't we continue to look at the lights around us and acknowledge that God is with us?